You're watching PM Agenda. Time to welcome our panel of political strategists, Bruce Hawker and Grahame Morris. Very good afternoon to both of you. Look, we were just seeing those beautiful pictures of the Torres Strait and the Prime Minister making a significant visit to the grave of Eddie Mabo, and wonderful to see a Prime Minister do that. This was going back 22 years now, and John Hewson, who was then Liberal leader, talking about the Mabo legislation in Parliament.
The opposition will make the government's unjust, divisive and damaging Mabo legislation a major issue right up until the next election.
Grahame, who was his press secretary back then? I'm just trying to remember. I think it was one Tony Abbott, wasn't it?
Look, speechwriter.
Yeah, that's right. Times change. You know, political parties change their position, but it is a fascinating one, isn't it? That you can go from that position to one where he's become the first PM to visit the grave.
And strangely, I worked with John Howard, and he never believed in the terra nullius theory that Australia was vacant when Cook and Co arrived. Yeah, look, I think. Yeah, I've been to a lot of these Indigenous communities, but I've never been to Mer Island. And yeah, good on the PM. You know, should he be there? Of course he should.
Yep.
They're Australians. It would be an interesting visit for you. He'll learn a bit, and he'll get a bit more information on a number of things. One is the difficulty of living at Mer Island. A bit of a feel for the importance of Mabo and the extended Eddie Mabo family, but also perhaps just a few tidbits on the recognition thing that may be slightly different to some other people.
And that's a good point. And they, Bruce also focuses the nation's attention, I suppose, for a week on the particular issues there in the Torres Strait, and they can be things like getting, you know, as we've heard some of them say today, getting fresh food and you know, other goods to families and communities there. I mean, there are a lot of challenges in some of these communities.
They are. They're a very widespread island group in the Torres Strait Island. So yeah, in the Torres Strait. So very important, I think, that the Prime Minister's gone there, and I'd endorse what Grahame said about that. Anything that points to you know, the legitimacy of native title, which was something which was challenged so vehemently for so long by so many people with vested interests, is a good thing. And also a demonstration by the Prime Minister of a commitment to Indigenous affairs is also an important thing. The world's changing, and I think mainstreaming this issue is very important.
Let's talk tax. Now, Joe Hockey, not for the first time, saying bracket creep's a problem. I think everyone agrees on that. Grahame, what do you think are the chances of a significant tax reform package being taken to the election?
Look, I don't know. From the government's point of view, I hope there's a big one. Right. But look, I don't think anyone knows yet. I've heard the Treasurer say a number of times in the last 6 months, including the last 6 hours, that he would like to he will take a tax cut package to the election. He probably should add the word "I hope to" take it, because it depends on the economy. You know, we had a big crash in the share market today. It depends on a lot of things, really, including the premiers, the business community, the Senate, and everyone else. But and we've got a white paper and a green paper all coming out saying this is what should happen with tax. And over the next few weeks, we're going to have the Australian and the Fin Review, and you know, Uncle Tob Cobblies and all telling Hockey what he should do about tax. But yeah, look, he is focused on it. He has a little group around him that's focused on it. And I would bring in the best and the brightest in the country, and that's not necessarily a heap of accountants and a heap of business people, and just say, look, how can we do this? We know what we want to do, but how can you do it?
But I mean, that's the thing. There's always, Bruce, the question of how do you pay for it. But there is no doubting that bracket creep is a problem. Income tax relief, we've had to wait a long time now since there's been any.
Well, I agree, but you have to be very careful about what solutions you put in place to deal with it. I mean, the GST, hiking that by 50%, would not be a way of really reducing the tax burden for people in lower incomes. It would just be displacing it. It would be moving it from one area into another area of their pocket, you know. So I don't see that as being a particularly good solution to any of the problems if that's where they want to go. I think the prospects of, you know, significant tax reform and I mean reform and not just tax cuts, would be very dependent on how the government's tracking over the next few months. And so far, they're doing very poorly. So they're not going to want to be rocking the boat particularly, I would have thought. I mean, John Howard introduced the GST at a time when he had a very, very healthy majority, as does Tony Abbott. But he all but blew that majority in bringing in the GST. And so, you know, they'll be very, very conscious about that when they start playing around, because they've got no room to move.
Well, and also need to work out with the states where the extra GST money would go. Mike Baird in New South Wales wants to use it for hospital funding. Joe Hockey would obviously want to use it to bring down income taxes. I want to get your thoughts too on this story that's still kicking around Andrew Hastie, the Liberal candidate in the West Australian seat of Canning, ahead of the by-election in 4 weeks' time. And this front page story in the Fairfax papers on Saturday, dragging up his record in Afghanistan. He's a former SAS captain, and he was commanding a team of which at least one soldier is, well, in fact, still under investigation for cutting off the hand of a dead Taliban fighter. Now, there's no suggestion that Andrew Hastie did anything wrong. Here's how he responded to it over the weekend.
This matter was dealt with by an inquiry officer's inquiry, and my actions at the time were appropriate. All but one of the troops was cleared. The investigation was launched after the issue was raised up the chain of command, and it was raised by me. The investigation into this single soldier has taken 2 years and 4 months, and it has not yet been finalised. This issue has cast a shadow for almost 2.5 years over this man's life, and I believe the Defence Force has a duty of care to finalise its investigation more quickly.
Grahame, he knocked that one on the head fairly effectively there. What did you think of all this?
Well, I think he's all class. You know, you can just see that he's one of the better candidates I've seen, and I've run, you know, a lot of the by-elections over the years. He's a beauty. As for the issue itself, look, the heading, and there's a big picture of him, was a matter of conduct. Now, Greg Highwood's meant to be looking after the Fairfax organisation, and I suspect it's time he had a look at the matter of conduct of some of his senior editorial gurus. I thought it was an absolute disgrace. And the Melbourne Age, what is it, 200,000 circulation behind its nearest competitor and falling. And you know, there are 14 Greens, 3 Labor people and 2 business people who haven't looked at their subscriptions the last 25, the only people using it. And you wonder why. And this was, you know, there was a way of writing this story, and it should be written. There was a way of writing it, but the treatment of having a huge picture and a matter of conduct above this man was an absolute bloody disgrace.
Bruce, do you disagree with any of that?
Well, I don't know if it was a disgrace, but I don't think it's going to actually hurt his prospects in the seat. I mean, I think the Australian public has a pretty hard attitude when it comes to fighting the Taliban, and probably with good reason. And as he says, there's been a 2-year inquiry going into this matter. He was not the subject of any allegations himself, so I don't think it's going to affect him. What happens in Canning, of course, is another story altogether, with a 10% swing already on the way. They've got a lot of work ahead of them. We'll see.
We're out of time. We'll talk about that next week. I'll get your thoughts on how things are tracking in this by-election race. Bruce Hawker, Grahame Morris, good to catch up with you both today. Thank you very much for that.